Kia ora, welcome, hello, and thank you so much for joining us for Keystone Talks. This is our very first entree into live streaming, and we are extremely excited to join you this afternoon. My name's Amanda Staines. I'm the General Manager of Keystone Trust. Today I'm joined by some phenomenal people who are going to share their stories and their insights with you. Just to give you a little bit of an overview of some of the things that we'd like to talk about today is we're just going to run through what is diversity and inclusivity, how does that happen for you and your company, and how can Keystone Trust be part of that, and how can we work alongside you to make something really valuable happen for you, your staff and your wider community. We have an apology for you this evening. Tamati Parker, who is going to be joining us on this evening's panel, unfortunately has COVID. So I hope that Tamati is actually resting up and he's probably watching this on his couch, and we wish you all the very best. COVID is certainly out there, and so all the best to everybody else who is suffering with that at the moment. This is a welcome to our sponsors who are joining us this evening, our students, our alumni, our supporters and our friends. Thank you again for joining us. What I'd like to do is just give you a little overview of the Trust and what we've been achieving over the past few months. We've started 2022 really, really well. Believe it or not, even though we're in lockdown, we've done really well. We have now got 53 students that we are supporting. And what we just wanted to show you here is things have changed a little bit since when we started. So today we have 250 scholarships that we've been supporting over the past 28 years. And in fact, in 2 years' time, the Trust is going to be facing its 30th birthday. And so from 2 students that we originally offered scholarships to today's 53, that is a significant growth. And we thank you, our sponsors, for enabling that to happen. What we'd also just show you is that this year, 22 scholarships were offered. And we have next year, we'll be offering a new Key School Leaver Scholarship and another Key Scholarship Partner Scholarship to a tertiary student. So thank you to Vital for stepping up. And thank you for Pink Beluga for joining us. We have been able to secure 6 new sponsors this year as well. So the Trust is going extremely well, and we look forward to seeing you at our events, seeing you at our rugby lunch, and of course seeing you on these live streamed events. For our students, I think it's really important for you as our sponsors to understand just what it means for them to have this opportunity to go to university and to study at tertiary level. We know through our research that for our students, when they actually leave us and become alumni and they get into the working world, your enablement of their studies ensures that their earning potential is about 30% more than someone who has left school with NCEA. And in fact, it's actually 60% greater than someone who leaves school with no qualifications at all. So as a student coming into Keystone, you are enabling them to also have their students follow their siblings following them behind them, because we know that 45% of our students are first in family. And so what you're doing is growing the ability, the educational and health and mortality opportunities for our populations out there, and we thank you for that. So today's session is about diversity and inclusivity. And as I say, I have got 3 amazing people who are representing us, 2 of our alumni and 1 from one of our sponsors. So I'd really like you to think about the questions that some of their comments might inspire to you. Please put them in the question and answer space. We will come to them towards the end of the session, and I look forward to sharing them with our panelists. And so please do that. We also might have a few other comments that will come through. In the meantime, I will now hand over to our MC for the afternoon, Simone Sharp, who was our Bailey's Scholarship recipient in 2006. Thank you.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. I'm really pleased to have 2 people who I know very well, both professionally and personally, joining me here today. I've got Sam McGavick, who is a director at Dunn. Sam may be familiar to you as one of our 2007 Study Award students. She was also the star of Mariah DIY on a TV show, and she's the proud parent of a business and a newborn son, Max. Next to Sam, we've got Arch, who's a principal at Warranamani. Warranamani became sponsors in 2016, and Arch is the recipient of many of the awards himself, including a Keystone Outstanding Mentor Award last year. Arch may be familiar to you from his many podcasts and online gaming and flight simulation events that he takes part in, and he won't be thanking me for sharing his secret shame with the rest of the world once more.
Cool. Thanks, Simone.
Right. I'm going to dive right in with the questions here, so I think I'll direct my first question to you, Sam. What did receiving a Keystone Trust scholarship mean to you and to your whānau?
Okay, great question. Just as Simone said, I'm the mother to a son that I've been at home looking after for the last 6 months, singing a lot of nursery rhymes and things, and so if I stutter, I'm talking about sort of the working world again, please forgive me for that. So I received my scholarship, a phone call about my scholarship when I was in a maths class in 7th form, we called it at the time, and it meant a lot. It meant a lot to me and my family. I was living with my dad at the time. He was working a couple of jobs, looking after myself and my little sister. And my parents, were able to provide a lot for me and my siblings in our life. But one of those things wasn't help financially with tertiary studies. So Keystone, helped a lot in that regard. When I was studying architecture in the first year, they took 300 students for the first year, and it was whittled down to 80 in the second year. I don't know if it's still like that. But it meant the Keystone Scholarship meant I didn't need to work in my first year. And I was told by a lecturer that I was quite friendly with that I was at the bottom of the list of those 80. So I think it was quite a, sliding doors moment of could have continued in this industry or not, having that time to, dedicate to study. And then, after studying, I got my first job through a Keystone event and meeting someone who initially was looking to help me find a job, and then after a few coffees ended up hiring me himself. So significant impact that's come from Keystone.
I think I can attest to the same. So my first job out of university was with one of the Keystone partner supporting organisations, and I've only worked for Keystone companies in New Zealand since I finished my degree, and it's a commitment that I've made, and so if anybody wants to employ me in the future, you might need to become a sponsor. But it really did open doors for me as well, and I think that as coming in as a key sponsor partner scholarship recipient towards the end of my degree, and this was my sort of second career that I was going through, it really did open my pathway into the construction and property industry from somebody who had just left university, and smoothed that path for me, but also allowed me to have an easier transition from the career that I was leaving behind into my new career, which just made an absolute huge difference to me, and then obviously into the rest of my life and the rest of my career, and has also given back in so many other ways. Sam, can you tell me about your current role?
Well, as I mentioned, the nursery rhymes. But other than that, I'm just heading back to work at the end of the month, which will be interesting. But I'm director of a company called Done with my sister, Kristen. And we started Done 5 years ago. It's a sustainable project delivery company. So we deliver both built and natural environment projects. So sometimes we build things in a sustainable way or regenerative way, and sometimes we might do something like lead a project which is a water body restoration, or a way at looking at caring for a particular plot of land or something like that. So that's what we do.
Is that a pathway that you'd seen for yourself when you were completing your studies?
Probably not. I probably had a much more traditional path in mind, and in fact when I finished and I was looking for work, it was a sort of a GFC type year, and so people in my year took between 6 and 12 months to get work actually in the industry. I was working at Q, the clothes store on Queen Street when I first finished university, and I was looking to work in architecture to begin with. And it wasn't until it was Julian Huggins, and I'm just referring to this anonymous person, but it was Julian who spoke to me about project management and kind of explained what it was about. And through our conversations, he thought that might be something that I could be all right at. And so no, I hadn't seen this pathway in the beginning at all. No.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm going to throw to a completely different topic now, Arch. Just regarding WAM, why have you guys chosen to sponsor Keystone Trust? How does it fit in with your own thinking personally, but also with the business's ESG and D&I strategies?
So we've been sponsors since, I think as you said, 2016, 6 years. I mean, we see it as part of just a kind of obligation and a responsibility to give back, obviously, and I think that would probably be very similar for all of the sponsors. In terms of, I think what's interesting is over those 6 years, being able to observe what's changed in our practice culturally, the colour and shape of our practice and the way we're able to talk about D&I and act on D&I. That's been what's interesting for me, and the way that that's paralleled with Keystone. So the financial support is of course immediately impactful, but when I look back on the way that the sorts of events we've been able to have to be able to bring students in the last sort of 18 months, our team have participated in mentoring. I think that's been a hugely rewarding process for those people as a much more direct and personal giving back. And then I think there's all the other, being able to take some of these students through to site visits, bring them in and illuminate the profession, show them what it's about. I think we think that the profession is much broader than it might be perceived, and being able to open that door up and show to students that there's actually, there's a place for you. It's much broader than it may look from the outside, and having people in our own practice who are modelling that and actually, modelling that and showing that gives real credibility to that.
Yeah, I think that's one of the great things that we've seen with the students that we do bring in as well, is that they get a snippet of a small part of the industry, but they actually get to see where the interaction is broader outside of your company, or even the practice areas that they might be thinking about and working in. At university, you're in an architecture class with architecture students. You don't generally mingle with engineers or project managers or quantity surveyors, but able to have the students experiencing that earlier on while they're still studying can really open up some eyes to how you can work collaboratively, and then you bump into those same people in your first project, and it's really great to see that recognition when somebody bumps into someone from Keystone or somebody that they've just passed in the hallways at universities on a project.
Yeah, you touched on quite an interesting point there, because we're looking here at the graph of the makeup of what the different students are studying. Of course, it's easy to go, it's great to get an architecture student into an architecture practice, but when we've done those visits and site visits or presentations in the office, having all of the different sectors that those students are studying is really fantastic. And again, I think it's a both ways thing. It goes exactly to what you said. Once they are in and working, they're going to be collaborating with all of those sectors. They've already got relationships amongst the student group, and they've got a kind of interconnected mesh of the same relationships with the rest of the sponsors who are in all of those disciplines. It's really powerful. I envy it retrospectively, if you know what I mean. I think it's a really powerful thing.
Yeah. Sam, just thinking a bit further about the diversity and inclusion, are you able to share any of your experiences in choosing the fields, or maybe your experiences as minority, gender or cultural identity, and how that sort of played out for you, and how, if you see how things are changing now? Because I think we've all, I just spoke to it before, things are changing over the last few years in particular.
In the connection to Keystone, I found it really helpful having a network of people who are diverse and a bit of a mixed bag, to be honest. When I was working, even when I was quite young and it was quite early on, there was only one female, for example, who was above me in project management that I worked with regularly. There was one more in our company that I didn't interact with. she was wonderful, and there was a lot to learn from her. But I think, having connection to you and Karina, and other students and other alumni and sponsors, where you can look to a range of people and understand the way that they do things, and they have overcome some of the challenges of being female or being Māori, or other minorities working, and just kind of learn from some of the things that they have been through. I think I've been reasonably or quite lucky, in that women in our industry have been through a lot more in the past, but that doesn't mean that it's perfect. And so it has been good to have those connections to people when you can talk about some of those challenges that we've discussed. Things like, thinking about balancing work and parenting, which is something that's new to me, and just managing yourself in a leadership role when sometimes a natural inclination can be to look towards a man. One person that I worked with on Marae DIY actually said to me, it was so good, but he said to me, you look young, you're short, and you're female, and so you have to learn how to manage effectively with all of that, because it's never going to change. And I found that quite, just quite a helpful thing to just have someone, acknowledge. Yeah, I hope that somewhat answered your question.
Yes, it has. Yep. I think I've certainly found through a lot of my connections with the Keystone Trust is that we've formed our own little support networks and group of people that we can go out and talk to, or come to with problems, and they can be, career problems, but also, working issues that we might want to have a chat with about different project management things, how to tackle awkward council, some of those things I know that I've spoken to you about. And, we do have this support network around, which I think is going further into the trust now as we're developing our mentoring and those in reach, I guess, for the alumni group in particular, but also for as sponsors, going back into the students and getting just as much from the students that are currently studying as they get from us as we help them through their careers. So a question to both of you, I'll let you, you can fight over who wants to answer first. Any thoughts on students and new grads coming into the industry? What can organisations like ours do to support them to create places where they can be nourished and to drive their determination?
Do you want to take it?
I just spoke.
Yeah.
You're welcome to.
It's kind of we would look at it as an employer, as a studio, we'd look at it probably kind of from an onboarding thing as one lens. So we put a lot of effort into how people are onboarded into the studio. There's a lot of kind of different networks and supports, from who they'll work with on a project. We'll try and buddy up with someone who's a peer and not on a project, try and create lots of kind of networks to connect, to support them. I think that change thing I mentioned before, though, we've been able to get better at making those matches. We've become better at probably seeing and listening things that were a little harder for us to hear and see before, and make more nuanced matches to those people. And of course we just have a broader group of people and broader group of experiences with which to make those matches. So we put a lot of effort into that, and that buddying up so that they're coming in. And I think a sign for us, then we want to look back and measure and see, are those things successful? Are people flourishing? Are they thriving? Are they expressing themselves, authentically and naturally? Are they bringing their real selves to work? That's then your measure to see if those things are working. And we sort of do a bit of back patting, and we're very happy when we see those things come up. Our team's sort of independently talking about Nowruz, the Persian holiday, and Matariki and Pride, and these things are now almost pulling away from us rather than being pushed. And I think that's a really healthy signal, I suppose, that those are perhaps working. Because of course they're very hard to directly measure on a spreadsheet. So you've got to look for these softer feedback mechanisms that they're doing what they're doing.
Yep. That's good. I can think of a couple of things. The first would be, as much as graphs and things are helpful to see, how things are changing and some of the good direction that our industry is moving in, is to just be mindful not to hire to tick a box, but not to hire just because you have a wharenui or a whale or on the books or a particular mana whenua group that you're wanting to impress. If we're hiring a diverse group of people entering the industry, then that's going to serve the built environment that we're trying to shape, which is being built for a broad and diverse population. So I guess that's about not being too sort of tunnel visioned about some of the minimum quotas and things that you might be looking to fill, because people have unexpected diversity behind some of those tick boxes. That's one thing, and the other thing that I think organisations could be mindful of when they're looking to hire a diverse workforce is, once they're there, is just to be cautious of not rolling out your diverse employees. So this is feedback that I've heard from some younger students, not necessarily Keystone students, but students and graduates. Sorry, graduates is what I meant to say, not students. Is that they, will be brought out from behind mundane CAD work when there's, for example, mana whenua visiting the office, and then otherwise kind of quite backseat. And so it's being really really honest, I think, with yourself as an organisation that you're really really are nurturing some of those people that you've brought on board, because it can start to feel really disingenuous and off-putting to some of those.
That part of identity
graduates
just gets flipped on for this,
Yeah.
flipped off for that.
Yeah, and then sort of sent back to work on a door schedule or something. Those would be the couple of things that I think are most front of mind.
Yeah, I think a thing that's sort of come through from both of you is just about making sure that your interactions are meaningful and honest in what you're doing. And quite often people sort of say with ED&I that it's great to be invited to the party. It's even better to get up and dance. And you want to make sure that people are actually partaking and doing it in a meaningful way that is meaningful for the business as well as for them, because otherwise people won't get fulfilled. And I think we like to promise people the world when we're employing them and paint a beautiful rosy picture of how life's going to be, but we need to go back and check on ourselves to make sure that we're actually delivering on those promises. Yeah. Awesome. Right, another question here then. We'll do it the other way around this time. So Sam, I'll start off with you. One more tip or anything else that you might like to offer out to the sponsors there, for them to sort of take away from today about how to build ED&I and how to do it in a meaningful way within their businesses, and potentially how Keystone can come in as part of that.
Yeah, I think I probably accidentally worked it into the last question a little bit, but I guess just to further that a little bit could be to not only look at employment but also look at your procurement as another way to ensure that you have diversity and inclusion on your projects, maybe that means hiring a small female-owned project management company instead of one of the bigger guys. But no, I'm joking. But just remembering that it goes beyond employment. That there's lots of opportunity to use kind of smaller minority-run businesses or individuals around Auckland, and particularly in this climate of, some of them that could, just be hanging in there after what we've been through with COVID and everything. So it's a good time to think about that. Yeah.
Yeah, it sort of sounds really obvious, but I think having a D&I agenda and policy is a really good start. If you want to, as they say, if you want to change something, you need to start measuring it. And I know that's been really instrumental for us because it's enabled us to measure some of those things that can be measured, numerically, those sorts of things, and that gets put over all of those decisions. I love your comment about procurement and the broader outcomes thing, which of course we see increasingly. And I think another thing that's really important for us is, we talk about wanting to represent the communities that we design for, and you touched on it earlier, that need to legitimately and authentically represent them is really powerful. It goes to what you said before also about not bringing those people or identities out on a case-by-case basis when they're actually authentically expressed, embedded in, it's really powerful. And I think the last thing is that I personally really believe that people actually want to see that. I think people really want to see it and benefit from it, and I know that just culturally in the office, the change over those years and the benefit of all of those different perspectives. You also touched really nicely on unexpected things, and I think that's something that it's quite a long journey. We were talking with Amanda about the importance of patience. Some of these have been really interesting for us to occasionally experience because to me they reinforce the value of it, but you've got to wait and you've got to let them build properly for them to come out that way. Yeah.
And I think recognise as well that it's not going to be an easy journey. It's not just all of a sudden overnight you're going to say, right, we're going to change the way that we hire or the way we deliver, the way that we deliver projects, or the way that we engage with mana whenua, or so many different aspects that you need to really have a look at, and having a strategy on how to do that really does help. But there's always going to be this sort of initial, right, we've got to get over this really uncomfortable feeling that we've got of we're trying to do something that might be different for our organisation now, and you need some champions within the business who are going to do it, and who are going to sort of be the ones to sort of take that step out and become the people who are uncomfortably perhaps leading the change. And it doesn't need to be somebody who is from one of the minority groups that's doing it, because these champions of change which are leading change from the other side of the I've lost the word right now, privilege. So the privileged few can speak up and bring others in along with it. You mentioned broader outcomes there as well. I think we're all seeing, all procurement that's coming through, particularly from the government, is increasingly focused on broader outcomes and how you can articulate that within your responses, and having a strategy is one way where you can say, this is what we've said that we're going to do, and this is what we are doing, and this is how we're going to get better, and that really does bring a richness, and I'm going to say it, give you a better score when it comes time to winning that work.
Yeah. And you can't buy that in short term.
No. And that's how you can show that you're actually meaningfully doing something, by having that sort of long-term metrics and understanding where you've come from and where you want to go to.
You touched on discomfort, which I think is a really good one too, because that's that signal that you have a culture that you're starting to shift out of, and it's absolutely been our experience over that time. You do have to get comfortable with discomfort. There are those moments, and it happens really kind of slowly, can't be wholesale. But that ability to kind of tolerate that and sit with that as those changes are slowly happening has been interesting to watch and interesting to experience, Yeah.
I think there's a recognition in the landscape now as well, is that people do want to change, and so small mistakes will be forgiven, and trying is much better than being too scared and holding yourself back and not doing something.
While we're talking, it's actually making me think that there's quite a lot of parallels with building sustainably. I think people are still, some people are still getting over that hump of thinking that it's kind of just a nice thing to do, but actually it's kind of necessary and results in better outcomes. And I think it's the same with, hiring and procuring in in a manner that considers diversity and inclusion, is that it's going to result in a better outcome. And so what? Yeah, it's sort of obvious. Why not?
It is,
Yeah.
it is. And sometimes you need to have that ESG strategy on a piece of paper that you can then make the links to say, actually, this diverse procurement sits well within this whole strategy. Therefore, we can, push ourselves a bit harder on this because we're aligning with our organisation's strategy on this. Sustainability initiative that we're looking to, that also aligns with our ESG strategy. So I think, totally agree that you need to have something down on paper with that. I think we've come to the end of the questions that I have there, and I know that Amanda's been getting a whole lot through on the line while we've been there, so...
Thank you, yes. And I think also just to reflect too around what we do for our students, so that whole selection process which you've been through, we work really hard when we have, I think like last year there was about 164 students, and then you look at that and you think, okay, in light of the industry, because our selection committee is made up of our trustees and also those people work within the sectors. So they're also going, what's happening out there? What's it reflecting? Looking at who's coming through in terms of these new young people. We work very carefully about looking at where they're coming from across the country, where are they going to study across the country, what are they going to study, what is the future for them, what's happening in the sector that we need to be aware of, and then we're looking at how does this fit with our sponsor family, but also what's that diversity issue. We've got 53 students. What does that look like? What's the ecosystem that they're going into? How does that ecosystem actually support them? And I think that's one of the questions that I've had here is, what can you do to support that young student? I think what advice would you give to current students to make the most of what Keystone is for them today, for them to be that authentic true self when they enter your workforce next year? What could you offer?
I might jump in for this one then. So
yes,
this is the first question that's been asked towards me. I think we've definitely found that with the students that we're getting through in the Key Scholarship Harness, and we get some amazing applicants, and we would love to award them all scholarships. They're just some of the stories of how these students have overcome adversity to just even get to the point of where they are in their careers. And you think about the change of going from high school to university, which Keystone does help people through when you get the school leavers scholarship, and then from the end of your degree to the start of your working career, which is where the key partner ones come through. And Keystone's there along the whole way supporting them. And I think once you get out of that university time, then that support really does need to come from your employer, from the people that are around you at your work. And so setting people up to succeed when they start by introducing them to a network and fostering those relationships so that they can have some friends, they can have some people who are, mentoring them through the organisation who they're not necessarily working with. Will really help smooth that transition, because I can remember back when I first started working coming out of university, and you sort of think, high school was so hard, university's going, and then you finish university was so hard, and then you start working and then you realise, this is a big change again. And I think anything that we can do to help that with just putting like-minded people together, and people who might just need somebody else that they can just have a friendly chat to.
Archie, anything you could add to that?
I think the networks thing is a really simple and super powerful one. That taking advantage of those connections, I guess, in order to try and have a slightly different answer. I'd encourage them to make the sponsors work for their role and draw on them and take full and complete advantage of asking them for whatever it is that's on their mind and their discipline. How can they get some more information, some more introductions, some more experience, whether it's a day or a month or a week. we're always out there asking what we can do, and I just say, they should feel absolutely up to contacting that group to do the same. But the networks thing, you need that one, to hear your story, Sam, it's just fantastic, right? That one first job and where it kind of goes from there. It's just a great illustration of the power of a little bit of serendipity and a lot of good, strong relationship.
And what a good launching off point. You can see he does podcasts. That first job, building down a bit deeper into that first job, a bit of an anecdote for my piece of advice. Now I'll start with the piece of advice. I'm not actually. I shouldn't do my own podcast.
I'd subscribe.
There'd be a few blunders, but my piece of advice would be that once you have an opportunity, whether it's an internship or employment, once you have an opportunity with an employer, with potentially one of the sponsors or somebody else, if you know that you can add value to something, just really don't hold back about it, because your managers might be looking after a number of people and they might not know about some of your extracurricular skills and interests and things. And so when I was working at Arrow, and I was, I don't know how old I was young, I was 22 or something, I don't know. And I was working on cell phone towers at the time. And that I was very grateful, but that wasn't what I went to architecture school probably dreaming about, to be honest. And another project came into our business, and for my very first client meetings that I was introduced to kind of sit in on, I heard that client say that it was really important to them that their own people were involved in building this particular building. And so I, in the background, worked on a community engagement strategy, which I then took to my boss, which he then invited me to present to the client. But it's things like that that actually changed my whole career projection, and had me build up experience that enabled me to start our business. So just really don't hold back and don't be shy, or kind of take your lot in life if you are doing a lot of. There's nothing wrong with door schedules, but it's just the example.
You keep saying door schedules, don't you? Yeah.
Or if you are, if you're on cell phone towers and that's not where you see yourself long term.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. I think for some of our students, it's seeing what the ecosystem actually enables them to have, and seeing someone who looks like them, sounds like them, gives them the opportunity to think of a pathway. Because in our role, we do see young people who say, that job, I would never consider that role for me because of my colour. And you're saying, how do we help you get past that? Because if you can speak Tongan or Samoan or Te Reo, if you can bring that with you into your working life today, that is recognised. That's actually an absolute skill set. And for some of these young people, they are absolutely surprised that someone would go, you think that's important?
It's invaluable. There are really big companies with really, really high up there people who are paying big bucks to be taught the basic level of speaking te reo and the basic protocols that people, of certain backgrounds just inherently have in them. So, it's not, it is invaluable and not something to be overlooked.
Great, thank you.
Even beyond te reo and tikanga, there's a whole te ao Māori worldview which just speaks to the way that the world needs to develop in. And having that view is something that's ingrained into you, and being able to speak to that really easily is something that people should be listening to.
Perhaps I've got a couple of other interesting questions here. On broader outcomes, do you think the majority of the industry is increasing diversity for public image and business strategy purposes? Or are companies genuinely wanting to gain perspective and show respect for minority cultures in our society? What do you think? Is this window dressing? Or are we doing more than this?
Yeah, it's a good.
That is one of our students. See?
Great,
our students are amazing.
Awesome.
But a fabulous question. And I think that is absolutely true, because we've all talked about you need a policy, you need this. Is that actually embedding it, or is that us just ticking that box that we were talking about? Are we actually being truly representative? Do we really want that authenticity? Are we ready to cope with that in our working environment?
Do you mind if I kick it off?
Please.
Please.
Go for it.
Please.
Sorry, I'm just linking back again to the sustainability work because it
Yeah.
is a similar question. Is this company building sustainably, recycling, whatever,
Yeah.
because they really care about it or just because they're wanting to look good? And I personally, this wouldn't be everyone's view, but my personal view is how much does it matter if they're going to start doing good? And so if one of these organisations starts to consider diversity and inclusion for image reasons, that's not something that you can control. What you can control is what you do with the opportunity once that, once it's happened, once you've been hired or whatever. So yeah, that's my thought on that question, is that you can't influence the reason why someone kind of decides to do good, but once there's the opportunity, just make the most of it.
Absolutely maximise it.
It's a great answer, well put. I'm a bit in Sam's camp about how much it matters. It reminds me of that cartoon that's like a conference and it says like global warming is a hoax, and the person's like, what if we like reduced waste and increased energy efficiency and made a much better world for no reason? But I think probably it's just unthreading outcomes from intentions, and it's very hard to know what they truly are. I think there's some aspects of going to D&I and whatever these broader outcomes are that they only succeed if founded on authenticity. And I think if those are I think you use window dressing. I think those instances, I think we'll increasingly learn to see that and see through that. But the outcomes, I'm a lot with kind of Sam here. It's sort of how much does it matter if it's making those improvements?
That might sound like I'm going against what I said about the importance of, of working with integrity and being authentic and things, but it's just that if it starts diversity and inclusion, it's likely, going to, what do you call that when this happens?
Tipping point.
Tumble? No, it's likely going to
Snowball.
Snowball into something meaningful over time because
I think it's part of a movement that pushes and extends all of the competitors in our space. I don't want to say regardless of motive, but there's a consistent kind of pushing like this that I think is a bit like rising tide floating all the boats to some degree. I think probably none of us would, of course, ever say that like the inauthentic attempts to do so are good.
But I've seen lots of examples where something probably did start a bit tokenistic or, to tick a box or something. And I've seen multiple occasions where the person who's been brought in as the rollout person then schools everyone. And what an incredible opportunity in some of the big, companies that we have around.
Simone, anything to add to that?
It's kind of going to sound like I'm parroting you guys as well, but if you look back to the women's rights movements and everything, and then, quotas that were brought in on the back of that, and then you wouldn't think at all now about questioning the need to have a diverse group of, including women on, the boards of your companies or as part of your groups that you're forming. It starts with something. There has to be a start. Like you say, what the intent of that start is. At some point, everybody's going to realise that it's a great outcome that's coming from it, and the more outcomes that are visible, the more likely people are going to get on board with it.
Definitely. And I think in terms of the way the students bring themselves into this sector now, there's a change. They're actually bringing it, and they're saying, we want to share this. We want this to be part of who we are. And I think there's a push and a pull process that's going on, and it's growing, which I think is phenomenal. Well, we've got one other question here too. Are there any groups that you feel are still not represented in the industry? And how can we attract a more diverse range of people? So who are we missing? And I think actually this may even speak to the session we would like to hold next time. But who's missing?
I think with diversity, it's not just race, gender, sexual orientation. You've got physical disabilities as well that probably are very underrepresented in the design and construction industry. And if you're looking to all of the issues that everybody can have, which are benefited by universal design, having people who are there as things are being drawn and talking through the process can only benefit the whole of society. So I think that's one area where more diversity would be really welcome within the industry.
And perhaps neurodiversity is the next
space.
I think too that we're looking at. I'm thinking of the students that we have who are now with us. We have some that are going to bring extra skills, super skills. How do we bring that into our working environment? How do we support that? So that we don't just think, oh, they're the backroom geeks. Actually, they do have a lot to add to our value as what we are as people and as communities, as companies. And
one other could come through employment, but it might more come through kind of just the way that we deliver projects is just I guess non-professional groups of people. So our industry naturally is made up of people who have studied at a tertiary level often, or in construction potentially not, but had a level of training. And so if you're building an environment for, say, let's use an example like a town space in Onehunga, there's going to be, you're building that space for a population that's made up of both professional and kind of, all of the other jobs and ways that people live their life. And so delivering projects in a way that you can bring in those voices as well is something that is, as a group that's potentially not always looked to, other than the odd community open day, quick tick. That could be there's opportunity to improve that.
Fantastic. Well, I've got one last question, and it's a really interesting one. So it goes back to that mentors you were talking about and just the power of the mentor. Now, sometimes for us with our students, we go through a selection process and we match so that we really make sure that our mentee and our mentor will actually have a very fulfilling relationship in terms of that mentor calendar, which is for 1 year. How did each of you find your mentors? Did you choose them yourself? Were you introduced to that person? How do you go about choosing that person? Or maybe you've got more than one person who's your mentor. Just very quickly, because I know we're running out of time.
Oh, we're running out of time. Can I just say thank you so much to you and Felicity and Luella for the mentoring program that you run through Keystone, because our mentors who have gone through the training have just found it absolutely amazing. Fantastic. And it's made them better with their own stuff as well as with the mentees that they have been paired up with.
Grand. Well, that's one of the benefits of working with Keystone.
Absolutely.
The outside mentor opportunities. I think if you identify people that you haven't got something for them inside, there's the external opportunity. Fantastic. Thank you. Oh,
I've
great.
found my mentor, quite a few of my mentors have actually come through the Keystone Trust, through people who I have made connections with over the years at different events, or through the sponsor companies and those types of things, and people who have just taken an interest in what I'm doing and have opened themselves up to a further conversation outside of that event that we were at, or
That networking is so key, isn't it? Just taking that business card and then following up, having the bravery to do that. Arch, yourself.
Just the kind of phrase that sticks from what Simone said is the person who takes an interest. I think that's sort of at the core of it. If I think of my own mentors, that was a distinguishing factor. I felt that they had a genuine interest. It wasn't necessarily like a vocational specialism or anything like that, but that idea of genuine interest was at the core of it. And that's, I think, what made it meaningful to me. They were very good at listening and giving advice. And as for my own mentee, we were kind of set up because we were in the same discipline. But I'd again just tautoko what Simone said. I mean, our team 5 of our team have been mentors this year, and I know that personally, it's just one of the most rewarding things in quite a tough year. and like to be able to find my mentee a summer job, you know, that was just felt fantastic. You know, it's a really great thing to do. Yeah.
Definitely.
I think just with the, you know, the topic being diversity, that's it. It's looking. I don't really believe that you can find everything from one person, and so looking to kind of all of your interactions as the opportunity for mentorship. If you work with someone and you like the way that they work, you don't need to tell them that you're looking at them like a mentor, but you can really kind of dig into that person and think about why it is that you like the way they work and learn from them. And I've learned from people on site, project QSs, clients, lots of different people. So just keeping that eye out for opportunities for mentorship, even if it's not something formal.
I think being curious, being genuinely curious about somebody and actually genuinely wanting to understand them and what's happening for them is probably what makes the really great mentor. And you know, that's why our Outstanding Mentor Awards are awarded as they are. So well done, Arch. But thank you. That's been a phenomenal session. Really, really appreciate you bringing yourselves and your insights to it. As I say, Keystone celebrating 30 years in a couple of years' time. That's something also to be recognised, I think. We really want to continue with our Keystone Talks, and we've had interest, and I think actually coming out of this conversation is another one, and that is around that neurodiversity and neurodivergence. And we're looking forward to welcoming Callum McHenry with us on the 9th of June. So I hope you will put in your diaries 4:30, 9th of June. Callum, just to give you a little bit of a background to him, he has a degree in anthropology, a man after my own heart, and social geography, and he's an HR professional, and he works in Dunedin. I was on a workshop with him with the Construction Accord, and just his way of addressing and engaging people was really unique and different. And at the end of it, he said, well, I've got complete ADHD, and I'm just, this is who I am, this is what you get, is who I am. And he's now working with a number of companies. He's been working with Deloitte, he's been working in the public service as well, and is now a consultant really with other companies. So I thought, this is what, this is the new thing that's coming through. We've had this terrible stigma around neurodiversity. It's time to actually take that out of the closet, look at it, embrace it, and see how we can work with that. So looking forward to joining Callum next time, 9th of June. But in the meantime, thank you so much. Superb this evening, really appreciate it. And we look forward to send you all an event survey shortly, and we'd love to hear your feedback and love to hear your ideas. What else would you like us to present and have here as a discussion point for you to help you do better in your role and the way that Keystone can facilitate that. Thank you for this evening. Look forward to catching up with you again. Hopefully in Auckland, 11th of May, we have our thank you event, and then Felicity and I will be driving, well not driving, we'll be flying, which is rather scary actually at the moment, but we'll be flying down to Wellington and Christchurch and meeting with our sponsors and our students down there and taking them on some site visits and hosting our sponsors and supporters at our annual thank you events. We look forward to seeing you there. Thank you. Good night.